White Rabbits, a primary school book for grade 3. Hello folks. Well, I spent a couple of weeks in Sydney recently. I filmed a few teachers for the True Arrow Academy, including Dr. Anthony Dillon, an Australian with Aboriginal ancestry who holds a positive view of Australia. I spoke at the Classical Liberal Education Seminar organised by Dr. Kevin Donnelly with presenters from across Australia. All 8 sessions are exclusively on the truearrowevents.com website. Today's video looks at a book typically shown to grade 3s called The Rabbits. The plot is simple enough: invasion, overwhelming expansion, Aboriginal people are victims and need to be saved. Early colonisers are drawn as rabbits, an introduced species. They certainly aren't the friendly, fluffy kind and look more like sinister rats. Marsden's words instill a victimisation in Aboriginal children and guilt in white children. Animal Farm somehow inspired Sean Tan's illustrations. Sean believes that children react well to issues of natural justice. I believe that manipulating children's strong capacity for emotion to make them victims or guilt-ridden kids is rather sinister. The Children's Book Council of Australia love Sean's work and have given him various awards. So let's skim this book. The rabbits came many grandparents ago. At first we didn't know what to think. They looked a bit like us. There weren't many of them. Some were friendly. But our old people warned us. Be careful, they won't understand the right ways. They only know their own country. More rabbits came. The rabbits spread across the country. Still more of them came. We lost the fights. They stole our children. Everywhere we look, there are rabbits. The land is bare and brown and the wind blows empty across the plains. Who will save us from the rabbits? The end. Okay, so we're introducing the concept of stolen generation to grade 3. They're 9 years old, roughly. For brevity, let's just say that the stolen generation is not something as simple as stealing children. The book also begins the narrative of not caring for country, which ties in with climate change propaganda and other agendas. It's a biased book, missing many historical perspectives, so here's a few. White Rabbits ignores the myriad of Asians who came here mostly for gold and then basically left when the gold dried up. Obviously it's not going to, but it could mention something about the early Australians, the white ones, trying to end slavery on the coast of Africa, and that the English, over in England, were spending decades doing their best to end slavery across the entire world. And the English were even told to bugger off by the Maoris who enslaved Polynesians. Even the most left-of-centre researchers will not conclude that the Macassar traders didn't introduce smallpox, which devastated large amounts of Aboriginal people around the same time that the first fleets were arriving. In between them, in fact. There's no mention of the native Pygmy tribes whose existence has been wiped from textbooks since around the 1960s. What about the Aboriginal clans that massacred each other, and usually in the dead of night? What about all the great successes of Aboriginal people now who don't need saving and who hold positive views about Australia? Best to ignore them, apparently. So always ask, what's the intention? What's the intention of those writing, illustrating, publishing, selling, promoting, awarding, and reading this book to impressionable children? I'm sure it largely comes down to mostly good intentions from older people who don't know much about history at all, trying to help people with some Aboriginal heritage and who haven't thought about the consequences of their actions. But aside from having Plato's allegory of the cave feel about the book, in chaining white children with guilt and chaining Aboriginal kids with victimization at the bottom of the cave, there is great unseen future damage. How does it help Aboriginal children to grow up thinking they are victims who need saving? How does it help Caucasian kids to look down in disgust at their very existence and entrench negative views of their nationality? How does it help all the children of all other races in Australia to look down upon Australia? Everyone loses together. It's very, very divisive and it's very racist. It makes me think about all those times in history where an early step is to divide rather than unite. The saddest immediate fact is the continued neglect and abuse of Aboriginal children suffering in the unseen shadows of good intentions. Adults have a duty of care to protect children from abuse, neglect, bullying, and in my book, that also includes a duty of care to protect children from the damaging agendas of adults. So once all these seeds of disgust and racial divisiveness, hate, have been planted over 7 years of schooling, Year 3 students can revisit this book 5 years later in Year 8 for a performing arts unit prepared by Reading Australia, which advises students to read extracts from Bruce Pascoe's Dark Emu so that they can, quote, dispel some of the most commonly held myths about Indigenous culture and civilization. Bruce Pascoe is a fake Aborigine, and Dark Emu consists of many untruths and lies and fabrications and exaggerations. Basically, Dark Emu is for white people who can't accept that Aboriginal people, cut off from everything else that was going on in the world, were pretty much skilled hunter-gatherers. But if you read Thomas Sowell's work, this happened across the world, including for white people in their native areas, also cut off from the developed world and basically living in the Stone Age. In this White Rabbits Performing Arts unit, there is a link for Year 8 students and teachers to go to the Australians Together Resources website. Now, I covered this a while ago, looking at a unit at each level from Prep to Year 10. It's a doozy where from Prep to Year 10, students slowly become indoctrinated activists. It's long, but worth watching a bit of it. Aside from the fact that most education is paid for with our taxes, we're paying for it all when these kids grow up, sapped of hope and enthusiasm, and instead filled with guilt and hate and victimhood and despair. Is that the intention of people such as Sean Tan, John Marsden, and a myriad of others to create activists set on turning Australia upside down? Keep in mind, this has been happening more and more for generations, and then you end up with people trying to destroy Australia in creating things like The Voice, Makarrata, which basically translates to treaty, truth-telling, which all means treaty, and likely to be hundreds or thousands of treaties, returning land, loss of land rights, or reparations, and much, much more. Fact checkers, you are most welcome. You can no longer claim any of this is not true, due to a recent Freedom of Information Act that I will cover soon. It's a big problem. So what are realistic things that people can do? I'm creating an educational resource platform called True Arrow Academy of Critical Thinking, TACT for short, and the website will be up very soon, where each video can prevent or undo years of indoctrination. History in general is not as we know it. Climate change is not as youth know it, as well as other vital topics such as postmodernism and many more. Part of TACT will feature Aboriginal voices, Aboriginal Australian voices, who are trying to unite rather than divide. There's also a major unit on the real history of slavery from Thomas Sowell underway, and lots more down the track. It is a massive undertaking, but also a realistic one. It's also very expensive, so you are more than welcome to come on board as a supporter now or a subscriber once it has started and once it goes public. Please go to truearrowevents.com to learn more. I would very much like to know what are realistic things that other adults can do as their general duty of care for youth. Please add something in the comments. Thanks for watching. Peace out.